We are, and we're 10 seconds
We
away
are
from live.
live.
We are live, and it's going to be a good show today. Lots to talk about, obviously, with Phil.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Now, live from Chicago, the Hal Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Hal Sparks, actor, comedian, and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hal Sparks.
All right, let's do this.
Well, it's one of those Saturdays, Johnny Million, where I couldn't be happier to hang around with you, for one. That's kind of always, that's generally true.
That's always the deal.
Yeah, and we were right before the show started. I was mentioning the fact that you and I need to have a play date soon, and because we're in different cities, there's only a couple ways to do that. One is via Zoom and such, or on Xbox, and I'm going to make both of those happen. I've decided because over the next couple of weeks, we're going to need some like pressure valve moments.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy.
Now, I thought I had a big pressure valve moment that was coming on Monday, and I was super excited about it. I thought I was going to get my giggle on and satisfy my my itch for truth as I would fact check something with Donald Trump's big, enormous, fact-filled election fraud showing an evidentiary hearing press conference that he was going to, and he stayed chickened out.
I was so sad. It's like, boy, he must be scared if he's listening to his attorneys.
That's exactly right. That is singularly, what a beautiful observation, my brother. It is that is singularly the best indication that Trump is having a pants filled with soup moment is that he's actually listening to his attorneys.
Yeah, because everybody was predicting everything he says will be used against him.
Yes. Well, it was here's the thing. It's a continuation of the very fraud that he's accused of in Georgia. Yep. And here's his defense. And we've heard this a bunch of times, is that he really believes it. He really believes that the election was stolen, that it was really rigged. I know it was true. Rudy told me.
What if they could prove that he knew better?
Right. Well, and here's the thing. That means if that's his big fear, and he knows those conversations are out there, he knows the witness testimonies out there, he knows Mark Meadows is more than likely flipped on some stuff or is delivering for them. If he knows this, what's his only option, Johnny Million? What is it? I mean, it's to pretend he's deluded. Yeah. I mean, it is the closest thing to an insanity defense that he could possibly use. I'm just going to say that. But we have, by the way, this week, we have a mix of real news versus BS, gloom and doom, silly pants news. And there's, obviously, I enjoy the silly pants news, as do you. Mm-hmm. But in the background of the madness that is the current state of the Republican Party and the absurdity of their current field of people. Again, also, Trump is not going to do the debates either, which is interesting.
And I was forced to watch Fox News the other day, and I saw that he won't sign that pledge that says he'll back somebody if they become the nominee. Yeah.
Oh, and again, that in and of itself is an indication. By not signing it, you're telling everybody where you stand. The point of it is, and here I will say, there is always an articulable way of getting out of one of those things if you have any brains at all. And all you have to say is, I don't sign abject pledges for those kind of things. I will say before God and man and my fellow citizens that I will absolutely back whoever the nominee is because I care about our values as a party and blah, blah, blah. But I'm not signing some piece of paper that Fox has drafted to make it look like we all have to kowtow to their rules or that the RNC is the indicator of the true conservative values of our party. Like, how hard is that? That's off the top of my head I came up with that. Like, how... And I don't even like those people. And I've got a more defensible position that I've articulated than the leading Republican candidate for president. It's not hard, and it makes me very angry sometimes when these people can't even lie right.
They're not
haven't
good at it.
haven't you had a lot of practice? Right? Shouldn't you know better by now?
It's like they're not good at it when it really matters.
Right. Well, then maybe I think you've stumbled on something there. That it's really about like habitual manipulation of the electorate and the way they think that things are run, and you always lie to people just to get what you want, versus I have to lie myself out of a corner.
Yeah.
And that's way harder to do, especially
the stakes get really high.
And that's the moment, I think, above all, when you realize you don't know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? Where you have this idea like, if I knew all the details of this, I could whip up a quick lie and squeeze my way out past somebody, and exit the party successfully. But not if you don't have any idea. The greatest example is the carbon capture CO2 question that Trump got while he was in Iowa, which he said he was already solving before it was even a problem. And he has no interest in solving because he had previously been bragging about the very source of the problem itself, mainly ethanol. So ethanol carbon capture is a thing. The more ethanol you use, the more ethanol you want to use, the more carbon needs to be captured in Iowa to make it a viable fuel. Therefore, it needs to be transported. Well, it has to be transported across Iowa farmland out of the state because they don't want to keep it in Iowa. They want to dump it where it can go into the ground and stay there and not mess with the aquifers or cause earthquakes or any of that other stuff like hydraulic fracking can do in some places. That's the concern. Not necessarily the science, but that's part of the concern. And so this woman stands up at the Trump, I won't call it a rally. It was the thing where he was doing like, they all got to do 10 minutes. And she's like, what about the CO2 and the pipelines going through an eminent domain? It's like, we're covering it. We've got it covered so well.
Forgot about that lie.
It was totally taken care of. I don't know what you're talking about, but whatever it was, I already fixed it after Obama broke it. Before, it was so obvious he had no idea what the hell he was talking about. And it was probably the singular most complicated and noisy detail your staff would need to bring you up to speed on if you're campaigning in Iowa. Period. End of story. And he just whiffed it. He just and it's so classic Trump of the pretending to know. Okay, and so look at Rudy Giuliani. Look at Trump right now. Look at any of the co-conspirators, indicted or unindicted, or named or unnamed. It's fantastic. I feel like that, the greatest thing about the co-conspirators in the Georgia case is it's like they have a mystery square on a game show. Like, oh my God, it's Rip Taylor. You know what I mean? Like they're gonna they remove the cover on whoever it is. Like Paul Lynde, thank God. Now it's gonna be a good show. Apparently, word is one of them might be Tom Fitton, the guys whose T-shirts aren't fitting, and I know who am I to throw stones, but I get it. Tom Fitton of the left, I hear you. But for the record, I don't wear too much rouge. I think it would make me look cheap, so I don't do it.
You always wear that much eye makeup, Ben?
Yeah, right. Shouldn't wear that much eye makeup. Makes you look cheap. My sister wears it. Bend over. Ben, nice to meet you. Victor Hugo. That is the name he uses in the prison scene in Fletch Lives.
Victor Hugo? Good.
Yep, Victor Hugo. All right. So there is some real news, like I said, that we do have to talk about because it feels good. Because I would argue that we're dealing with the lies of Trump all the time. And these are crimes based on him trying to get things by lying and by manipulating and all that kind of stuff, but not based on the actual facts on the ground. That's the uncomfortable feng pi, as the Chinese would say, of this entire story politically, is that it's all based on butt air. It seems there's a smell that's lingering, but it's not. There's nothing tangible to go with it, and that's the reality of the entire feng pi situation that Donald Trump has created in the United States. He's not going to wreck democracy permanently. It's holding very well, as a matter of fact. But behind the scenes, Joe Biden, besides touring around on Bidenomics, which which Bloomberg and MarketWatch both think is a good idea and a bad idea. Thanks, guys. Thanks. We'll get back to you on that. That's great. Excellent writing. Excellent. But this week, Biden had a summit with with Yoon of South Korea and Kishida of Japan, and a historic trilateral agreement between the United States, South Korea, and Japan happened. Now, you have to remember that in World War II, Japan occupied South Korea, parts of South Korea, and there's still some. It's not. I wouldn't say it's an open wound, but the skin is thin around that area. If you know what I mean. It's easy to break. The same thing with China, and China and Japan have been more at it since then. Ironically enough, and the back and forth on it has become a bit, overt in that North Korea is sort of acting as an agent of China, scaring Japan. That's effectively the torture scheme that the CCP wants North Korea to pay out, and in exchange for that, they get some foodstuffs and other garbage. But the point is, this week after the monumental AUKUS agreement, Australia, UK, and the United States sharing nuclear-powered submarine technology. I would like to remind everyone, nuclear-powered, not nuclear-armed.
Yeah.
Very important distinction. We are giving.
I definitely think nuclear armed when I hear nuclear submarine. I immediately think that it's got missiles, even though I know better.
And I would argue that one of the problems with that kind of automatic knee-jerk reaction is a negative reaction to micronuclear as a power source, because we've had service people living and working around nuclear reactors under the sea for decades now, with no higher incidence of cancer than the general populace, with safe and sound.
My older cousin worked on the USS Nimitz and the near the nuclear power part of that, and he said it's the safest spot on the ship.
Yep. And it's reinforced, and I'm arguing in the future, and you will see this, that over time, you're going to see that for cities. That those very reactors, tested and retested many times in submarines and in some battle cruisers, those aircraft carriers, those will be available in a slightly larger size to run cities at some point. Perhaps with thorium, we can keep our fingers crossed. But on the other side of this, I want to talk about this new trilateral, which is the Biden administration has effectively stitched up the entire South Pacific after Donald Trump has done everything to favor China and allow them, hegemonic takeover, both industrial and militarily of the islands around Japan, the islands around Vietnam, and the like. And they're a bit frustrated right now, and it's not going to get any better. And then, of course, Hurricane Hillary, which just sounds like Donald Trump's worst nightmare. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, now with 100% more Johnny Million. He's got a Twitch channel, twitch.tv/It's Johnny Million. You should subscribe to both of ours if you're on the Twitch machine. Twitch.tv/Hal Sparks as well. We'll be back. At the door open, and I was like, the fan's gonna bother everybody. And yes, I have Legolas hair today. Yes, it's true. It's okay.
What hair?
Legolas. They always say I have Legolas hair from Lord of the Rings.
I don't know what that is.
Elf hair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, half up, half down, whatever. It's the what I would call the elf mullet.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
It's elf mullet, yeah, and I'm cool with it. I'm not gonna do a man bun, but I'll do elf mullet and
Is there any way to mush those two words together?
Elf mullet?
A melfit? No.
A melfit? Yeah. It's
Melfit's close.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll work on it. Chat room, have at it. It does have, if you can't see the ponytail, it does have like a bit of Jean-Claude Van Damme in Hard Target. Where he had his like Jerry curl mullet.
Yeah, that was
extensions. Yeah.
1 minute, guys.
What kind of name is Chance, anyways? My mama took one.
Wow. Of all the lines to remember, you're like, that's the worst line I've ever heard. Committing it to memory.
Yeah, this is why we're friends. All right, I downloaded this thing. Let me see where my, let's see. Go to here.
Alphalet Muffet. Muffluent. Muffaletta
What?
do.
I beg your pardon? Oh, I see. You're still working on names. I thought you were reading super chat names.
Look at all the super chats from Muffaletta. Hal Vickery, of course, came in hot.
Oh, thank you, Hal Vickery. Bless you. Good to see you.
Yeah.
10 seconds.
Thank you.
Muffet. 2 for Muffet. 3 for Maletta. Elf Mutt.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Well, we were unsuccessful in coming up with a nickname for my hairdo today. But Elf Mullet, I think, works fine by itself. I just think
Elf Mullet is fine. Okay, we'll do it live.
Right. I agree. and the other variations, shortening it anymore makes it sound dirty. I'm just saying.
Immediately.
No chat room. No. Infotainmentwars.com is our website. Of course, it'll send you to the YouTube page where you can subscribe and support the show. And then, of course, halsparks.com will take you to all the sites or whatever. And, of course, we have a Facebook page where we stream as well. If you're on Facebook, you can stream there and see us.
That's crazy.
That kind of stuff. Where Johnny Million gets increasingly more blurry at times. And we'll work that out later. I think it's just, you're just having a blurry day. It's one of those. We all have them. So the U.S., Japan.
Sometimes if I clench up things,
that's what happens, right? You get blurry in front. And South Korea took this is from the New York Times, but in general, this is the general thing. Took a significant step on Friday toward creating a bulwark against the common threats from China and North Korea, forging a sturdier three-way alliance to bolster security. President Biden hosted South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida at Camp David in the first visit by foreign leaders to the presidential retreat since 2015. The three committed to consulting on threats to each security, working together on ballistic missile defense, which is because they're both worried about missiles from North Korea just randomly striking their country, conducting annual joint military exercises, which they always do, and holding yearly summits to maintain the momentum. And that's the difference. Besides this being a trilateral agreement of its own, like he's spoken to each of these countries. Every president, except Trump, has maintained relatively good relationships with our allies and gone back and forth. But in this particular instance, all three of these countries are going to have a yearly summit, effectively, going forward. And Biden even said, regarded as a multi-decade agreement, meaning that these yearly summits amongst South Korea, Japan, and the United States are going to continue for decades, which is a good thing. Now, it comes at a time when like I said, the AUKUS agreement and the reinstitution or the reinvigoration, I would say, of the Quad, which is this, shouldn't be any surprise, 4-country agreement, involving India, Australia, and Japan, I think. Yeah. Anyways, and the United States in. Am I wrong about Japan? Now I have to look it up because I'm talking about Japan so much. I've got it stuck in my head. Anyways, but the reinvigoration of the Quad agreement, along with this, along with a constant reassurance from the Biden administration that we will support Taiwan if they are attacked. Even if his administration walks it back on occasion, the words have gotten out repeatedly to the point where they're aware. And we actually have Marines in Taiwan right now, and they're not going anywhere. They're there for training and that kind of stuff. But a surprise attack by China would entail killing American soldiers. And those soldiers have effectively, are carrying out a duty that is almost singularly protecting Taiwan from a sneak attack right now, and have been since Biden got in office.
How do you sneak up on Taiwan?
Well, you don't sneak up on them. You just don't hedge the attack. You use fishing boats.
You don't put
and
any
other
feelers
stuff
out there and go, if you don't do this, we'll attack.
Well, look at
attack.
Russia's build up on the border. That you do it. You do a major strike by air.
You're like, here I come. I'm not touching you.
Yeah,
I'm not touching
right,
you.
Which Russia. We finally realized that, and Medvedev the former president / prime minister / president, I forget what ping pong ball he was the last time when he was switching positions with Vladimir Putin, but he stated lately that this is a multi-decade fight for them, or a decade-long fight for them, for Ukraine. The idea that they're going to wipe Ukraine off the map is something they're planning on doing for the next decade. So the idea of stopping that idea in its tracks early is a good idea and will save the most lives. Because I got news for you. If there's a peace plan right now and everybody just stops where they are, drops what they're doing, and goes right to the table, according to Medvedev, Putin, and everybody there, that we'll just lay back until we can go for Kiev again. We'll just build up and attack again. And now we know who's going to come to their support and all that. Anyway, So it's just awful. They're just awful, awful people. Two other big pieces of news, and I want to deal with that before we get into the sort of silly pants part of it. Like, again, that is a very serious aspect. This agreement between the United States and South Korea is wonderfully normal. You know what I mean? It is just normal diplomacy.
It's the kind of stuff that you long for being bored by. Like, oh yeah, that's just the news. That's just politics, whatever.
Yeah,
like the people who didn't notice Obama for 8 years. Like, I don't know. I figure he seems like a smart guy, and stuff is getting done.
Yeah, and the economy was recovering after the terrible, so we just got on with it. Right?
Yeah.
And that's what happens when you take it for granted, and then you get somebody like Trump in.
And that's why Biden's getting lost in the shuffle. All of his amazing policies are just people are still only noticing Trump.
Right. And where they're trying to notice Biden is where they're trying to just ballast against Trump's legal troubles, which we will also talk about in a bit. But it's not working out for his allies, nor any more than it is working out for him. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the other two big stories I would say that are happening is Hurricane Hillary, which, interestingly enough, the timing on it is particularly hilarious, and the fact that it's headed for California is ironic beyond measure. A lot of us were like, man, the timing, the letters just being slightly off. If only the Gulf. It would be so ironic, and the news stories, and I would just like all the weird strip mall evangelical megachurch psychopaths all going, the Lord has sent Hurricane Hillary because of the gay things we're allowing in abortion. You know what I mean? Anyways, so Hurricane Hillary is headed for Baja. It is going to land and move north.
All right, one moment. When I hear Baja, I immediately in my head go, Baja hee ha.
You really do?
I do. Is that Captain Caveman? Anybody?
No, that's just... I don't think so. Captain?
Come on. Somebody.
That's what that is.
This is where we need Tom, because Tom is he's my cartoon historian.
That's true. Yeah. Would you like to phone a friend? Should we call Tommy?
Yeah. Oh, God. No one is saving me in the chat.
It's very sad.
Oh, my God. This is sad.
Now, everybody's...
Fred Flintstone.
Nope. I don't know.
No, but it's not far off.
It feels like it feels like Woody the Woodpecker if he was a smoker. Anyways.
Some people are just screaming Captain Caveman, and others are saying that I've finally gone off the deep end, which I'm okay
all right.
with both.
Sure. Let's go back to the real news for a moment, if I could. But
I'm just going to yell that in the middle of a news story now.
It's very boring.
Here's another thing I read in the New York Times.
Right. That's going to be the introduction to the Johnny segment when you have your own news point, like Monkey News on when Carl Pilkington used to do stories on the Ricky Gervais podcast. Okay. They have what I love. The thing about that I love about the news around the Hurricane Hillary is they have what's called a spaghetti plot. A spaghetti plot is they plotted out the possible directions, and there's so many variables they have no idea. So there's just noodles of direction everywhere. Where's Donald Trump's Sharpie when we need it? You know what I mean? Like if anybody could solve this, it'd be Donald Trump just going, there it is. But ultimately, the idea is that it's going to end up breaking, in theory, to the west of Los Angeles slightly and turn into a tropical storm. And we are under a flood watch here in Las Vegas because of it. And it was interesting. The today is trash day around where we are. And boy, were the trash guys here early. Boy, did they just get, they were normally about 7 a.m. They got in, they're rolling in at 6:15. They're like, let's get this done. Let's get this done before the water comes. We got to take a break. When we come back, I want to mention the Maui fire and the government response to that, and how that moves into what I would call a new thing we're seeing called big government conservatism. We'll be back. Yeah.
All right, I found it, Hal.
Okay.
One moment.
He's going to play it for me.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
A brain. Very large a brain.
That's not it. I don't, that's not.
That was just a bunch of farts, wasn't it?
Yeah. That was like, yeah, there was a bunch of
60
that.
seconds, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I've got a...
Trump released a statement. He said,
Yes, he did.
yep. Rudy Giuliani was quoted as saying, actually, it was,
Oh, Rudy.
oh, Rudy.
Oh, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, come back. Can you hear it?
Yes. What is that?
It's an episode of the Flintstones where he's like a superhero. He
Oh,
comes
that's
swinging in.
that's his Tarzan yodel.
Yep, yeah.
One
But he's got
second.
like a cape and
Video.
everything. I found the YouTube video. I put it in chat.
Oh,
Whew, man. You know how I found it? I googled Bafflement.
Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
what do we do during the breaks? What do we do to
You
amuse
Google
ourselves? Yeah, that's I gotta say, kudos to Google for actually being able to. I mean, think of what that would have gotten you as far as a search result in
on
2002.
InfoSeek or Mr. Jeeves.
Yeah,
Nothing.
Mr. Jeeves.
Somebody in chat said that has nothing to do with Baja. Oh, yes, it does.
He says Baja. He says it.
It's Baja.
I'm with you. So obviously,
Oof.
I don't see any movement on the Republican side towards the understanding of climate change, even with the massive disasters that are happening. And there are certainly elements of the Maui fire that are less climate change related and more related to a similar issue that we had in California with California Edison and some of their older transformers and electrical lines that in certain instances could break free. And even during the regular dry times of the year would set fires. That is very different from having so much dry brush because of climate change that lightning strikes set off giant cascading wildfires, which is the direction we're headed in and why we need to do something. But this is this is more related to that. And there were videos posted hours before the wildfire that ripped through the Lahaina blaze that showed these electric lines dropping sparks off them. I'm just saying, and
Yeah, it was you.
it's a tough one, and hitting dry brush and burning, starting a fire. So people believe it's a direct relation to that, and that's where this is going to go. But the billions of dollars of federal aid has already gone. The Biden administration has sent, at my count, 7 different agencies down there and support people from the EPA to the SBA to FEMA to help people financially and with shelter and with recovery efforts and with clearing toxic debris and then clearing debris and then eventually moving to the rebuilding like adults. It's just honestly, again, their response was so normal and so functional that it's gone below the radar. But one of the things that stood out about my reading about the current circumstance there is the investigation. How and why hasn't there been a federal investigation yet on the cause of it, like there was, let's say, with the train crash in East Palestine. There's two reasons. One is the East Palestine wreck was clearly a failure of the train and therefore is under both state and federal regulations. And the state had the ability and the idiocy to decide that a controlled burn was the way to handle it without consulting, the national EPA. It was OHEPA, the Ohio EPA, OEPA. And then you have a similar situation until they know that when you have disaster relief in a state, the federal government does not, on the regular, come down and go, all right, what started this natural disaster? Unless the state asks for that help and they believe it was there was some reason for it that you could do something about. Obviously, like after a hurricane, nobody goes down. They won't send people from, the National Weather Service to go, all right, which way did the wind come? We know. The issue here is that if it was a man-made cause specifically, as opposed to, in the abject via climate change, and if anybody's culpable in this, the rest of and until the state says we think so, it might have been arson, it might have been because of, the electrical problems. Until that
might have been arson.
Yeah, right. Until they
be a shame if you got some nice electrical lines around here.
Yeah, it'd be a shame if something had happened to those. Yeah, it was just it was some of the Vegas guys who were, it was Elvis's old folks that hang out.
Right.
His whole whatever his group was called. Anyways,
the TCB guys.
Yeah. We're just taking care of business, man. And stuff caught fire. What am I gonna say? So, so they sent
stuff caught fire.
I don't know. Everything burns up. I was hot. So the state has to ask the federal government for that kind of help, investigatory help. Now that shouldn't necessarily be the case, and I would argue, and I think you would too, Johnny Million,
the Memphis Mafia.
Thank you. Yes, the Memphis Mafia sounds even worse when you say it that way.
It really does. It sounds insanely racist.
It does. Yeah, violent, terrible. So one of the things that you might say is a proper response to a situation like this, which is when you have a jump ball in terms of what caused something, and you want to make sure that what happens if it happens again while we're still dealing with this. Again, if it's natural causes, there's not much you can do except make people aware of it during the season. The federal government could put up signs around here. They do like, don't try to outrun the water, by like people who try to drive through underpasses that are full of water and that kind of stuff. Because you can't stop the water. So you just have to warn people. That's all you can do, right? Short of, having walls built that slam up in flood areas. It's, that kind of nonsense, which is totally useless the rest of the time and may never be used again.
Wall.
Yeah, right. So in this particular case, an investigatory body that goes along with the emergency management agencies seems like a good idea, a federal one that doesn't need necessarily the state's permission because you're spending federal funds, that goes immediately with the FEMA dollars down there and goes, hey, what started this? What caused it? How do we stop it from happening so we don't have to spend the entire nation's taxpayer dollars on Florida over and over and over again if they're not hurricane related, or if it's erosion that they knew was going to happen and they built anyways, and those kind of things. So why not have that? Okay, that sounds like a job for the federal government because states aren't going to do it, and it's got to coordinate across state lines, and it deals with the expenditure of federal dollars. It works as sort of like an inspector general, if you think of it that way. And Democrats, it should surprise no one, have been talking about this for quite some time. The House under Nancy Pelosi passed what's called a disaster investigation plan, and it stalled in the Senate because they couldn't get it across the line. Mainly because of two groups of people. One, the states where the disasters happen the most, namely Texas and Florida, senators from those places, and the Rand Pauls of the world who don't think any of the states' problems should be any of the other states' problems because the United States of America is not the name of the country. It's America spelled with a U. And fascinatingly enough, Nancy Mace, who's been one of Biden's, worst like midline critics, she like rides that MAGA fence quite a bit. She, is convinced, obviously, that the president is a crook and that the federal government is nothing but overreach and states' rights and blah, 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 blah. Literally, when she was interviewed for Politico, this is a quote, she said, Hawaii, maybe this is the trigger we need. Maybe this is the impetus to get it moving through the Congress. We don't want this thing to happen in vain. It's such a huge tragedy. And good for her for noticing this. She's talking about this emergency investigation plan. Or the disaster investigation plan. And who else is, on board with it? Who is it? Because obviously, like, Katie Porter is on board, right? She wrote it. And Nancy Mace is trying to help get a Katie Porter big federal spending, arguably big federal spending. I don't think it'll ultimately cost less than it expends because it'll fix gaps in our response and save more lives and all that.
Yeah.
But it is fascinating to me that Nancy Mace and other Republicans are finally coming around to, we need a federal response to this. We have to get this. Yeah, right. Who'da thunk? So, and how close are we on this? We got another couple of minutes on this. So I guess the upside to that is that they're coming around on some baseline stuff. And again, this is the boring part of government this shouldn't be controversial. This shouldn't be even partisan. If you have, and states like the Dakotas, Kansas, Montana, Wyoming, places that have tornadoes and other problems, Washington State has a active volcano in it. There's going to be a need for this kind of thing. And anyways, they deal with it all the time. But when you have, on top of that, the potential for human reasoning behind these things, an investigation is not bad. And the wildfires that happened in the Northwest over the last year and a half, a good portion of those were fires set by human beings, and effectively eco-terror. A couple of them led back to people who believed that nobody was acting fast enough on climate change, so I'll show them, start a fire, and it'll scare everybody, and they'll react. Which,
I don't like that.
No. For the record, not for it. That's insane. And in my estimation, arson is attempted murder. You set a cascading fire through an area, and you don't care whether there's campers or not, or people who live out that way, or which direction it goes.
It's like going and blowing up a plane and going, see, look what could happen.
Yeah.
Not safe enough. It
is, yes, it is precisely in that zone. And then on top of that, there's another part of this, and I think it's an interesting bellwether that may be a part of Republicans moving kind of away from Trump world a touch, putting a toe in the water with their own constituents. Nah, I'm just kidding. They're just hypocritical. The Biden administration and Congress and the U.S. Department of Education, they moved around funding under the bipartisan Safer Communities Act of 2022, which passed and was to help eliminate some of the gun problems that we have. It had the one that had the first gun registration, I think, in 16 years, 25 years. I mean, since the assault weapons ban, essentially. And it was a big deal. But part of it is that it cut federal funding for firearms training in schools. So some schools had hunter safety courses, all over the South. This is not that weird. But and archery classes. Now, archery has a special dispensation. So most people are because it's a moratorium on the teaching of the use of deadly weapons in school. Whereas, and most, I gotta say, most archery programs fall under sports because it's in the Olympics, as is shooting, but hunting is not. And unless, my thing is, if you want some sort of federal funding for it, then I would argue put on some skis if you want to go shooting. But yeah. I guess. But John Kennedy, John Kennedy, one of the men who would be better for all of us if he was just voicing old 1950s Disney cartoons, is very angry that federal funding through the Department of Education, an organization he does not believe should exist in the first place. Because I got news for you. You eliminate the DEA, the Department of Education, the DOE, DOE. I'm so reading too fast. The DOE, if you eliminate it entirely as a program, all that funding goes away, dum-dum. So why are you complaining about the edges of a program that you don't want to even be in existence, period? Now, I know he thinks he can use this as kind of a wedge to push back on, the sort of fading power of the NRA and all that kind of stuff. But I find it fascinating. He goes, in a letter, Kennedy and other senators sent on August 11th to Joe Biden said cutting off money from hunter education programs will have a detrimental effect on safety. More than 500,000 students participate in and are certified through hunter education courses annually, the senator said. Such training has decreased hunting-related accidents 50% since the program started 50 years ago. Okay, that's not really a cut. Guns themselves have become more safe by 50% since 50 years ago. They have a tendency not to blow up in your face more often. In Louisiana, archery is a competitive sport in the middle and high school level. Ed Pratt, spokesperson for the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, said 113,921 students in the state have participated in archery classes over the past 7 years, including about 19,000 late last year. Now, they're going to get a cutout for archery, I don't doubt. But Louisiana's hunter education courses have trained 74,000 fourth grade through high school students since 2016, he added. State officials are aware of the federal funding laws, and the matter will be presented September 7th at the next Wildlife and Fisheries Commission meeting, Pratt said. The Biden administration is aware of the concerns of the Republican senators, some of whom supported the bipartisan Safer Communities Act. The U.S. Department of Education recognized the current language in the bill limits specific, quote, enrichment opportunities for ESEA funding. We're happy to provide technical assistance on legislative language to address the issue and restore allowability of ESEA funding for valuable enrichment opportunities for students such as archery and hunter safety programs. The problem is they didn't have any distinguishment between handing a kid an AR-15 and letting him learn how to shoot it because one day there might be hogs. And and learning how to use a hunting rifle. Also, when I was growing up in Kentucky, we had the JCs. We had a group that you went, if you wanted to learn to shoot, that was, you went there for target training. And I did that for 3 summers. And then we went to their skeet shooting ranges and all kinds of other stuff. And nobody who wants to can't afford it. And anybody who can't afford it just shoots up their backyard. So I'm serious, like, Kennedy isn't worried about kids in Chicago not getting hunter training programs. He means out in the South, in the middle of nowhere. And the reality is like, here's a good idea, Louisiana. Pick up the program yourself. If it is singular to the environment that you're in and you're worried about the safety of students, great. I love that you care. So pay for it. But the problem is, Louisiana, like the other states from whom the letters came to Joe Biden, is that those states take more in federal funds than they give. They are, by a large amount, the blue states keep these states afloat, period. So they couldn't. And so as you cut those programs, fascinating enough, and it's why all the rhino complaints on the side of Republicans, when they go talk, they say, well, I don't know why the budget always gets bloated and keeps going up and keeps going up, because the states that don't make any money keep losing money, and the states that make the money and have more students and all that kind of stuff grow because they put their money where their mouth is in terms of funding, and because it's balanced in the federal budget, effectively, They have to fund Louisiana to even out where they think the funding should go in the big metropolitan areas and the bigger cities with industry and all that kind of stuff. So in doing the right thing for their own constituents from a senatorial and congressional level, they catch the flotsam and jetsam of the Louisianas in the states and end up funding everything. And instead of admitting, you know what, we're not bootstrapping the way we should here in Louisiana or Alabama, we need to bring it. We need to have initiatives for people to start businesses and feel safe growing a business here. We need to invest in education and all that on our own. We have to make good use of those federal funds. They curse it when they're running for office, and then behind closed doors insist on it being there, or they won't sign on to stuff that keeps their own constituents alive. It's absurd. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. There's a...
I will be right back.
All right. I have to see if I can show this. Okay, I need it smaller. A little too small. Sorry. Working on it. I need a let's see. Now I'll just make it bigger when Johnny's on with me. He'll be back in just 1 second. We'll just leave it. We just leave the seat empty like Elijah. Like it's for Elijah. Drag this out, and this will be as big as it needs to be. That's fine. There he is. Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket. That's gonna that's never gonna get old.
Oh, that's a bold prediction.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
A chat with you and somehow death loses its sting.
We're back.
Shut up and never say anything again as long as you live.
Somehow death loses its sting.
A chat with you and somehow death loses its sting.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty great. What did I need to see?
Attention, stop what you're doing. Because we're coming back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Oh my God!
They went a little crazy with it, and I appreciate it.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
All right, we made it through the break. I made it through the break. Now, here's the thing, Johnny. There's a moment of seriousness, if we could. Serious talk. We quit it. No, seriously.
That wasn't me this time.
Johnny, stop it. We've got to be serious right now. I mean it. I need you to take what I'm going to say very seriously. It's
They're not allowed to be offensive, unfortunately.
All right. One of my pet peeves, some of you may know if you watch the stream regularly, and of course, Johnny Million, you get, which is why we smile as much as we do, even when we're dealing with tough stories, is that I have that fundamentally what I would call stoic optimism. And I believe that everything you do in life is based on optimism. If you're moving forward at all, if you eat a meal, you're being optimistic. You think you're going to have time to digest it. You know what I'm saying? Like you're under the, every time I watch one of those like Law and Order episodes where they're like contents of the stomach were, I was like, that person was very optimistic about how their day was.
They did not think they were about to die.
They did not think they were not about to be assassinated by their real estate wife's lover in a scheme to steal a baseball that they had kept hidden from their friends that they were going to use to as a part of a scheme to undermine because their dad hates them. I don't know. Anyway, so it's very convoluted when you rub them all together. But I will say, and I feel like I've had some impact on this over the last year, if I do say so my damn self, is the Views of the Country poll that was just done, what I would call the OK Doomer poll.
Doomer.
Yeah, that they just did. That tracks the percentage of Americans saying that the country is, quote, in danger of failing as a nation. The next choice was not in danger of failing, but problems are bad. And the third one being on the right track. Now, there is no social credit politically in saying it's on the right track if your party is out of power. Right? And so kudos to the 8% of Republicans who said the country's on the right track. I see you and good for you. But the number of people who said that the country and by the way, the number of people of all registered voters who said the country is in danger of failing as a nation is 37%. And of that 37%, 56% of them are Republicans. No surprise there. Over half of the people who think, and the people weighting it as far as an average in one direction, are Republicans. Republicans are convinced we are, quote, in danger of failing as a nation. Now, according to Donald Trump, we are failing as a nation. And wait a minute, you're not Philip Hittner. I had the wrong name on it. I understand that. That's my bad. Sorry. I'll take that out. There you go. And then I think I have there he is. My bad. If you look at this chart, and I'm showing it online, and I think people can see it, it's pretty hysterical. The group most responsible for this feeling, Republican women. 65. Okay, so of the respondents of all the groups, Republican women, 65 to 28, being that 28% say it's not in danger, but things are bad or they're on the right track. 65% of Republican women say we're in danger of failing as a nation. 50% of Republican men say this, which is interesting, considering it used to be sort of a flip-flop statistic that Republican men are who put Donald Trump over the hump. Right? That's who.
That's not the case.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, this is what they're sort of counting on. Now, at the same time, this is like, and specifically, there are Democratic men and women. Democrats are 20% of the group that think that we're in danger of failing as a nation. Now, that 20%, I would argue, and this goes back to the sort of ACA arguments that we've had, is people who don't think that because Joe Biden is in charge, or the infrastructure bill passed, or that we're in a recovery and all that kind of stuff, or the economic news, or even inflation. 20% of them think that the country's in danger because Donald Trump might get in office again, or someone of his ilk, like DeSantis or somebody like that. That's why they feel that way, specifically. So, again, this goes to like the ACA had 56% of people who were against it when it came out, because half of those people never want anything like it, and the other half think it doesn't go near far enough and hated it for being half measure. You do not address that group singularly. You need two separate messages to deal with that in general. You also can relax in the idea that only 37% of registered voters think the country is in danger of failing as a nation. And the split is between Republicans who are afraid that Donald Trump's going to lose and Biden's going to stay in, and Democrats who are afraid that Biden's going to lose and Trump's going to get in, or no, other way around. That Republicans think Trump isn't going to make it and Biden will, turn America into a communist something or other. The important thing is that number is down. The doomer reflex is dying a slow, pitiful death. and I want to take credit for it. Hashtag OKDoomer. And we are making a dent in the doom sprayers of the world. And we just got to figure out a way to make Republican women figure out what the heck is going on. We'll be back right after this with our dear friend Philip Ittner, who's in Ukraine. Lots of movement there. Lots of back and forth in the languaging about it. And, of course, the depth of the agreement between the United States and Ukraine gets stronger all the time to the chagrin of the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world. We'll be back. There we go, and we'll bring
I see Phil.
There he is. I'll bring him in here in a second. There we go. Okay, and there it is. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Philip Ittner, getting set up. And
hey guys.
Jen. Hey, how are you?
Hot.
Oh, well.
Another blisteringly hot day today.
Understood.
Oh, is it for real?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very hot and sweaty and yucky and yeah.
Hal, do your cats like to chew on old guitar strings?
Yes, and USB cables.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you got to watch the ends.
Any Apple cable is a teething ring.
Absolutely. Is stuck. All right, let me put this away. I don't want to bring up my Telegram. Look at something for that. There you are.
People are trying to set you up for a joke, Phil. How hot is it?
Oh, dear.
Just reading the last little bits here.
It's 106 in South Texas.
It's not Texas heat. It's not Texas heat. It's hot. It's not Texas hot. Or for that matter, California hot. But it's hot and sticky and yucky, and I will be glad when the summer breaks. We start going into cooler weather.
Yep.
We're about to have a heat advisory tomorrow.
Where are you? You're Chicago, aren't you, Johnny?
Yeah. It just kind of came from out of nowhere. Yesterday was super mild.
Yeah. The thing that's tough about the Midwest when the heat starts is the humidity because of the lakes.
Lots of lakes. And Minnesota makes mosquitoes.
Yes, that's also true. Although my place on Huron is like right on the water, so the wind comes off the water.
That blows them away.
The skeeters. Yeah, the skeeters. But the at night, we just get covered because with the lights on and everything.
Oh, when everything settles in. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank God for AC.
All right,
109 in Fort Worth.
I got my map.
What is it in Vegas?
Here.
Right now it's 79 degrees, overcast. It rained like crazy. We were under flash flood watch yesterday. It's monsoon season.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So, let's see. There's Deep State map. Let me go to this and open up my stuff when we're
130% humidity in Florida.
Oh, you're kidding me. No.
I am.
No. Too much.
That's so hot your balls stick to other people's legs.
Yeah, I could never live in Florida, man.
Other people's legs.
I'm sorry.
Put everything on airplane mode, so we don't get a phone call.
Boston Brian's back in the chat.
What's up, Boston Brian?
Hi, Boston. Hey, buddy. Got that interview online. Thanks for putting it up. Hope you get good reception from it, or a good reception to it.
There's a...
There we go.
Okay, there's that one. There's a couple of things I want. Yeah.
What do you want? Yeah, what do you want to talk about?
There's a couple of things.
As always, there's a lot of stuff to talk about.
Right. Obviously, the bombing that killed 7 in, and I'm not going to be able to say Chernihiv. Yeah.
Chernihiv.
And then, it hit a theater.
Got to remember, we're on the radio.
Yeah, right.
We're in a break, I realize. But
yeah, we are, yes.
I just caught myself.
The airfield in Soltsi that was hit. Is it, let's see, so the other things I wanted to talk about with you.
Talk a little bit about the 82nd Air Assault guys, if you want to. That look like
okay.
They're going to try for Tokmuk, which will.
Stand by.
Going to go for
5
Tokmuk.
seconds.
Thank you.
That means they're
5
going
seconds.
for Melitopol.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Puss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
I know words. I have the best words.
Welcome back to the show. With us from Kiev with genuinely the best words. It's our dear friend Philip Ittner.
He's got so many good words.
Ittner, Philip, and some of them. Yeah, I know. That was not me.
Got hit by a car.
I had the perfect call.
No, that was me. That was me censoring one of his best words. He just knows that we're on the radio, and sometimes it gets rough when you're talking about some of this stuff because there's some serious stuff going on in Ukraine, and it can get you riled up.
A little riled up.
Yeah. So, first of all, how are you doing? I know there was a hit in Kiev outside in the I guess the manufacturing area outside of Kiev of some sort.
The areas outside of the capital, the further you get away from the center, the more they're susceptible to actually getting hit. Or also, of course, debris falling from anti-aircraft batteries. But we have the Patriot system now here in the capital. So in the very, very center of town, this is just a guesstimate, but I'd say a good 20-mile radius from the very, very center of town, which would be Independence Square. I'd say that we have a dome over us. Not quite the Iron Dome that we have in Israel, but we have a good defensive dome over us about that area within the capital. So we're never take it for granted. But yeah, as you get further and further into the suburbs and the outlying areas of the capital, you're less and less defended. So never good.
No, I mean, the level of danger isn't going to change until this is all over, and you have to keep your keep your head on swivel.
You have to take it all seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to take it all seriously, and
so there's
can't run every time there's an air raid siren because there are like 4 or 5 a day. But you have to be mindful.
There and by the way, chat room, get your questions ready. Feed them to Johnny Million. Reference Johnny in that, and he'll forward them to Phil when we get to that portion of the show after the next break. But obviously, I mean, where do we even start? There was an article in, I want to say it was the Washington Post, where they were saying that the Ukrainians can't reach Melitopol, can't reach Melitopol.
They can't reach the sea. They can't reach the sea.
But they are going to get within whatever 20 miles of Melitopol, which would cut off the land bridge. Even if Melitopol was sieged.
And it's also once again the Pentagon underestimating the Ukrainians.
Right.
And this has been a long running thing with them, with the Pentagon in particular. Right. And I've seen other guys that I know from my days in Iraq and Afghanistan, like General Ben Hodges, who I intend at some point to interview, pushing back against this, saying that you're not taking into account, X, Y, or Z, whether or not it is the amazing capability of the Ukrainian soldiers, the amazing capability of the command structure, how resourceful they are, their tactics, et cetera, or for that matter, the response of the Russians. I am with Hodges on this one. I think getting to the sea is still very much a possibility, and it does look like, tentatively, it looks like, and I don't want to write this in stone, but tentatively it looks like they're going to be headed. The Ukrainians are headed for a town called Melitopol. So we've talked about this in the past. This counteroffensive, I have been saying we don't know whether the Ukrainians were going to push due east and head towards the Sea of Azov and cut off the land bridge from a town called Zaporizhia. And I don't want to get too geographic with things like this because not everybody's got a map in front of them. But it would be due east, driving from a town called Zaporizhia, a big city called Zaporizhia, which is a military, intensely fortified military town. Or would they go southeast and head for another one, the other big kind of town, city, along the coastline of the Sea of Azov, and that's a place called Melitopol. And that equally would also cut the land bridge off, heading towards the Crimean Peninsula, which much of this war is about. And in addition to that, it would also bring much of the peninsula under potential attack from the Ukrainians. It looks like, tentatively, that's the plan. The battle plan is to head towards Melitopol. But we don't know because look,
why would they tell you
what happened last? Yeah, why would they tell a little old schmuck like me?
Well, anybody.
Or anybody for that matter. I mean, this plays into. I mean, look what happened in the last offensive, which was to take Kherson and Kharkiv. Is they
had faked all over the place.
Yeah, they telegraphed this idea that they were going to attack Kherson, and then they did an in run and went up and did this other city called Kharkiv near the Russian border. It was a master plan. The Russians weren't anticipating it, and in the end, the Ukrainians seized both. So. Operational security, OPSEC, is very important. But I am cautiously optimistic that that's what it looks like the plan is to try and head towards, through a town which is a hub called Takhmuk, that's got a road hub out in kind of the Donbassy area, the east of the country. And then if they take that, the next destination would be Melitopol. That will cut off Russia from its, the cornerstone of its empire is Ukraine and Crimea. I mean, this is stuff Catherine the Great took, a contemporary of George Washington, and it defines who they are. They will lose. I was on a conference call this morning with people, and we're trying to organize a trip within Ukraine to do some news gathering. And we all got onto this conversation about what happens if they cut the land bridge. And I think the Russians lose their mind over it. I think it will be the first indication that cannot be disputed by the powers that be within Moscow that they could potentially actually lose Crimea. And Crimea is this thing in their mind about access to a warm water port. It's telling that all the architecture in Crimea is Roman. It's kind of Romanesque with colonnades and all the kind of looks like, the Roman Empire, because they literally see themselves, and they say this within their history, within their culture. We are the third Rome. Rome, after Constantinople and the Byzantine Empire, the Muscovites think themselves as the third Rome. And much of that idea is caught up in their sense of empire, and much of their sense of empire is caught up in Crimea. So to actually be potentially about to lose that peninsula, they're going to go nuts. And Putin will be under real threat because no Russian leader loses what Catherine gained and took. And then survives. It's
one of
too great of a blow.
You mentioned Ben Hodges, and we'll take questions on the other side of the break too. But Hodges was saying that he was pointing out that the shooting down of the Ka-52 helicopters.
Ka-52.
They shot. Ukrainians shot down 2 of them, and they said that the fact that they were able to do this. He said the Ka-52 is the best helicopter tactically that the Russians have, and he thinks that the problem is that they put these amazing. He didn't blame the helicopter. He blamed the pilots effectively, saying that they were either arrogant or inexperienced, or both. And that's what led them to being shot down, which means to him anyways, that they do not have the pilots anymore to fly these things. So even if they do have more gear than the Ukrainians do in some cases, like as far as, for air superiority, they're losing the pilots to use them. And they're backfilling, which is just going to get their helicopters crashed. I mean, you can quick train infantrymen and send them to the front in a matter of days if they can follow orders and you have somebody capable explaining which direction to shoot. It's not a good idea, but it's doable. You can't do that with an airplane or a helicopter.
Or for that matter,
a tank.
You can't really do it with a tank. You can't.
Right.
Well, look, I mean, those who are watching on the stream, this is a shell. From a KA-52 that operator Starsky, who is a Ukrainian blogger, probably known to a good few in the audience. I interviewed him out at the Hostomel airport, where at the very beginning of this war, they shot down those KA-52s. And I thought you might bring them up. So I grabbed this. This is off a KA-52. This is a round that exploded because it was burning. It crashed and was burning. These things are not invulnerable.
Yeah, is what they say.
Yeah, it cooked off. These things are not invulnerable. And the Russians, before this invasion, were saying this was this amazing piece of kit. Well, the Ukrainians are proving them wrong.
You're right. We'll be back right after this with more of Philip Ittner and our questions from our chat room at infotainmentwars.com. That's our YouTube page, the Hal Sparks channel over there. And then, of course, Johnny Million will help us out with that. We'll be back right after this.
Got a few.
It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. So I'll show you this real quick, Phil, too. This is part, I've got my bigger map, but this is apparently after getting across the Dnipro, the Ukrainians have been in this area. Let's see which place, and they have passed the mines. They have gotten their tanks beyond the mined area. There are no mines in the area there.
It's too small for me to really tell where that is. Can you read me a name?
Let's see. It says, units of the Ukrainian army in all likelihood were able to break through and overcome the massive minefields in the RF forms at Berdyansk direction of the front.
Okay.
Yeah. NATO reveals the details of the offensive in the Berdyansk direction of the front. So that's one of those places.
I've heard this before that they're getting to the point where they're past the defenses that they've.
Yeah, it says it's noteworthy that the tank covered a large distance across the field without hitting a mine. At the same time, the crew rode confidently without fear of being blown up. And this is the quote, and no minefield. Seems the Ukrainian troops are past the massive Russian mine barriers. Steiner commented on the video published by the Viceguard 24 news aggregator. Fearless Ukrainian soldiers continue shooting at a Russian position from their Polish-donated PT-91 Twardy tank, recorded near Urudzine.
Mind you,
a few days ago.
Did you see the video in the last few days of the Ukrainian soldiers inside a Humvee that hit a landmine? And they survived.
Yes.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks Radio program.
I've seen two of those.
Mega Worldwide.
Welcome back to the show. Philip Ittner is with us live from Ukraine, and we're updating everybody on what's going on over there. And I think the most sort of direct / personal report you can get is on this show every Saturday. So thanks for joining us and checking in on it. We were just talking during the break that the Ukrainians have broken through the line in Urudzine, am I pronouncing that correctly, Philip? Uruzhny. So I'm obviously not. Uruzhny. And in that area, breaking through the line on foot, they've done a few of those things. They've done these, these advancements. These scout troops have gotten through. They even kidnapped and this may be related to this. They kidnapped a Russian commander and brought him back, and he's been giving them map positions. Now, it may be that he defected. I've heard that bandied about a bit, that this guy that they got a message from him like, hey, you can catch me and I'll stand my guys down, come save me, essentially, and I'll defect. But, I can't try to escape because they'll kill me.
For it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Ukrainians have set up a hotline where you can call in and do just that.
Yeah, it's like it's like a 976 number for lost Russians, right? And anyways, either way, he apparently has been pointing out on maps where their defensive positions are, where their ammo depots are, and all that kind of stuff. And so there has been an uptick, I will say, since that report in them not only hitting these places but getting through. And in this particular instance, it wasn't so much that they cleared the line, because that's happened a few times, like I said. It's the fact that they did it in tanks, and the tanks were not destroyed by mines, meaning that either they know their way around it or they're past the point where the mines exist. They have gotten rid of the mines that are there and moved past them.
Well, they're geniuses at this. I say they're geniuses. They're learning. They're sharp tacticians, and they learn from their mistakes. They've taken to filming the fields in front of them with thermal imagery cameras, because when the sun goes down, and it's really hot right now here in Ukraine, but when the sun goes down, the earth and the landmines, they cool off at two different rates. So the Ukrainians are so inventive with these kind of things, that they're filming these landscapes in front of them that they're going to be traversing at night, so that they can see where the landmines are with thermal imaging. It's very the video that's been coming out recently has been very impressive with what the Ukrainians are going through, and their advances they're making. They're very good at taking imagery from drones and stuff and putting it together, editing it so that it's compelling and you can watch and you figure out what's going. There's a video out shot from both a drone above the battlefield and then inside an American provided Humvee. And I've been in Humvee. I've been in more Humvees than I've had hot meals recently. I mean, it's that's hyperbole, but it's close to the truth. And those things are amazing pieces of kit. And there's a unit. There's a Ukrainian unit traversing. They're on the offensive, and they've got tanks with them, and they've got this Humvee. The Humvee, the gunner is shot from inside, so you can't really see what he's shooting, but he's laying down some really heavy fire, and then they hit a mine, is my understanding, but they all walk away. They all walk away. They all get out of the vehicle and escape, and there's a fireball inside this thing, but they still get away. That's the difference between what the Russians have, what the Russians developed with like
UK Ministry of Defense
armored personnel carriers and stuff like that. And what we do with ours. Ours are NATO builds their weaponry and builds their vehicles and their tanks and what have you, so that people survive, because you want veterans, you want people
who know what they're doing in case you have another war. You would like people who have been there to be able to relay what it's like. Yeah, right. That's true.
Yeah, the Ka-52 is a perfect example. The helicopter goes down. You lose the pilot because they haven't built the infrastructure to make these things survivable. Although helicopters, if you're going to go down, it's pretty much a death trap. But it's a different mentality in that there are more human beings. In Russia's mentality, we've got that's an abundance of stuff that we have as human beings.
Right.
Whereas what NATO tends to do is let's make them survivable, because you want these. Not only do you want these guys to survive because they'll be combat hardened and they'll be ready the next time, but also in addition to that, you don't want them being too trepidatious about trying to advance on the battlefield, because they know if they get hit that they're all going to die.
Right. So
it enables your troops to be more aggressive. So we'll see how this thing plays out. Look, the offensive is not over. We've got another good 6 weeks to 2 months. It's mid-October when things start to generally turn with the weather and rains and things like that. So we shall see. But man, if they can make it to Melitopol and they can cut that land bridge connecting mainland Russia to Crimea, it's going to be a huge blow to the Russians. Huge.
Right.
And I don't know how they'll react, frankly, but it's going to be a big deal.
Oh, there's so many things to cover. Kazakhstan knocking down statues of Lenin. Erdogan calling Russia and warning them because of the Black Sea, the grain deal back and forth between them, which is fascinating in and of itself. Again,
there's Chernihiv. Chernihiv was hit today.
That's right.
Chernihiv is a beautiful, I mean, a beautiful town about 90 miles northwest of Kiev along the Russian border. There's no military infrastructure there. There's no reason to strike it, and yet the Russians struck the very center of town, which is in essence just a beautiful little market square in the center of that, and that's Kazakhstan knocking over the linen, which I love. But Chernihiv was a terrible attack today, and it's been widely condemned. Obviously not just by Ukraine, but apparently a UN representative here in Kiev was very outspoken about it. There's no reason for the Russians to be striking that kind of stuff. It just shows their cynicism. And
let's
then
grab
we'll wrap it up with as far as that Lenin statue being taken down in Kazakhstan. I thought it was very funny the fact that actually they weren't supposed to be taking it down. There was supposed to be a ceremony that they would take it down, and the guy who was at the bulldozers are just
the hell with it.
Over, and it was,
that's hilarious.
Yeah, very funny.
Let's grab a question, Johnny Million, before we. Yeah.
Right, so from Ed's 3D Tech, can you ask if there's a beachhead now moving south?
I think there is. I mean, obviously, as I say, operational security, OPSEC is very, very important, and they don't tell us every single thing that's going on. But it looks like they're heading southeast from the Dnipro. It looks like there is a bridgehead. I don't know how significant it is, like how much acreage they actually own, but they're on the other side of the river. And that's a big deal. The Ukrainians are on the other side of the river with heavy armor. So they were somehow able to traverse to go across the river. They've got armor on the other side. That's a big deal. If they can bolster that and make it a solid crossing on the river, it's only going to make things worse for the Russians. And again, it's an indication to me and to a lot of folks who kind of watch this stuff closely. It does tip their hand a slight bit in that it does look like they're headed southeast as opposed to due east towards Mariupol. Getting back Mariupol is going to be a fight. It's going to be a heck of a fight, and it's going to be sad, and it's going to be awful. Not that it hasn't been already. Mariupol is a tragic, tragic story in this war. But it looks like right now they're headed for Melitopol, which is probably the easier fight, and the direction in which they'll have more success. So we shall see. But and one last quick thing about this is that it looks like they're pulling up one of their most prestigious units, the 82nd Air Assault Brigade, the Ukrainian 82nd, not our airborne, but their 82nd, has been called up. This is a unit that is incredibly experienced, incredibly capable, has proven itself time and time again in combat, and is also now completely kitted out with all kinds of NATO equipment, including the British Challenger 2 tank, which is arguably the best tank in NATO, aside from maybe the Abrams. And so we'll see what the 82nd does, but those are formidable soldiers. And if they're committing them to headed in that direction, it's another indication that that's the objective.
Right. I agree. I mean, I think I feel like there's so much head fake in this that even statements from the DOD over here, I take with a grain of salt, because they can, if they say, outwardly, we don't think the Russians, we think the Russians will hold it, or we don't think the Ukrainians can take it, then it very well may be that they feel the exact opposite, but they know how the Russians will react to us saying something like that. They'll push ahead in other places, or they'll go, oh, well, they're having a Princess Bride moment. You know what I mean? I can clearly not choose the wine in front of me. They have that issue. Who's lying and about what? Or, and since they're so paranoid, that is sort of the constant game. So, I'm fascinated by that.
But also, sadly, there have been instances where the Ukrainians have been underestimated by their partners in the West.
Right. Oh,
so who knows? We'll have to see. But I am not one to be pessimistic about what the Ukrainians are capable of. I've seen them. I've spent a lot of time with Ukrainian armed forces. They've got the bit between their teeth, and they are capable because it's their land. It's their land. That's a heck of a motivator.
Right.
Is that, we either defeat these guys and push them out, or we live under their thumb for who knows how long. So
right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll have questions from the chat at infotainmentwars.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, especially on our YouTube channel where we're growing leaps and bounds. We cleared the 55K mark, and I'm very excited because it's nice to have actual real viewers. Also, share the show out. Let people know we're here. We'll be back right after this.
God, yeah, if they take Melitopol, the Russians are going to go.
That's frigging that.
The Russians will lose that because it'll be the realization that they might lose.
Right.
And it's undeniable. You know, once you get cut off like that, it's going to be undeniable. And they're going to lose their minds.
I also think I think in a lot of ways it's more likely than not that it will happen because of all the pushback.
And then there's the potential of a third mobilization call, and this time they're going to be calling up like cops and interior ministry people, the OMON, OMON, which is the interior ministry troops. They're cutting deep, into their resources if they're pulling up those guys. So
yeah.
I don't know.
Meanwhile,
I think all the doomsayers are, getting ahead of themselves.
Meanwhile,
watermelons.
Meanwhile, in Russia, that's rubber. By the way, that's them backfilling how much stuff they have at stores with fake fruit. Is essentially what's going on there.
Pathetic.
Yeah.
Pathetic.
Well, the ruble crashing, we talked a little bit about that, but we haven't talked about it on the radio anyways. And the yuan is going through the exact same thing this week within a day. Thank you. Within a day. It's bad for both of them. And
autocracy.
Right.
You had your high water mark.
Right.
I think.
I agree.
But I'm an optimist.
Me too. Everybody is.
I know I'm only on one day a week. I get it. I'm going to have to jump on GarageBand and start sawing something together. This is the Hal Sparks Show. Wow. And then a guitar note, and then progressive, and all. Yeah, it's going to be good.
Hey, Hal, did you mean something like this?
This is the Hal Sparks Show. Wow. And a guitar note, and then progressive, and all. Yeah, it's going to be good.
The Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Obama.
So obviously there's been a lot of pivotal moments.
Made a pivotal, really.
Yeah. Where we know from I can't tell if that's somebody honking a horn or I'm needing
somebody
to censor
honking
Phil
on the street outside of.
Yeah. So, let's grab some questions because I know what I'll jump right into, which is, of course, the collapse of the ruble followed by the collapse of the yuan. But please tell me how a BRIC stablecoin is going to kick everybody's butt worldwide. Hilarious. Okay, so what do we have, Johnny Million?
Okay, from Linda Blanton, they heard Sweden is providing jets. How much of a difference could this make?
Sweden's providing a lot of stuff. Jets. We are gonna get the F-16 here, and I think that's maybe what she is. Linda is referring to. They're going to backfill the Swedes, who are going to now send F-16s here. Big deal. The F-16 coming here and being announced that it's going to be here. It's not going to be here by the end of the fighting season this year, or I say fighting season, the counteroffensive, because there is no fighting season in Ukraine. There are just ebbs and flows. That'll be a big deal. Now let's see if we can get the long range missile system or rocket system. I guess it would be. Well, no missile. The ATACMS, the ATACMS, which is basically fits into the HIMARS system, which was very controversial, but eventually we gave it to the Ukrainians, and they've made great use of it. This will increase their range significantly, and it will put a lot of Crimea itself under threat if we can give them the ATACMS. But the F-16 is very welcome. There'll have to be infrastructure that'll be brought in, and of course, pilots will have to be trained on F-16s. But that's good news. Ukrainians just would have liked it, a couple months ago. But
right,
as my grandmother used to say, beggars can't be choosers.
Indeed, and as my mom would always say, consider the source. And we're lucky we have a good one. Johnny Million, do we have another question we want to give him?
Sure do. This is from Elmac 1969. They're wondering if Phil has seen any Navy off the peninsula of Crimea. They'd heard from a U.S. military friend.
Navy off the coast of Crimea. I mean, I haven't personally. I'm aware that I presume they're talking about Russian naval maneuvers off the coast of Crimea. That's entirely possible. Sure. The issue in the Black Sea now is whether or not the blockade that Russia would like to see happen with grain exports, whether that will hold, and it's being broken on the regular. So the Russian Navy cannot operate too far away from its own waters, especially in Crimea, but even farther away. We saw them in Novorossiya, which is way far east on the Black Sea. They fell under drone attack, so there's no place in the Black Sea safe for the Russian Navy. Their surface fleet is at risk. They have been changing their submarine fleet to be able to launch cruise missiles, Kinjal in particular cruise missiles, these hypersonic cruise missiles. That's not good for the Ukrainians because there's very little they can do. The Ukrainians don't have a proper Navy. They have a Coast Guard. But they're still able to punch well above their weight because they have these drones and all the rest of it. But, could the Russian Navy try some sort of surface maneuver so that they could influence the Ukrainian, the shipment of grain coming out of Ukraine? Well, it's possible. They might give it a go, but it might put them really under danger with the Ukrainian missiles and drone, naval drones. So I haven't heard anything specifically, but I'll look into it.
Yeah, and also in relation to kind of the grain shipments and the like, this was a report. Turkish authorities have urged Moscow not to escalate tensions in the Black Sea following the incident involving a Turkish dry cargo ship, the Sukra Okan, in neutral waters, according to the BBC. Last Sunday, Russian authorities said the patrol ship Vasily Bykov opened warning fire on the Palau-flagged dry cargo vessel after its captain disobeyed orders to stop for lawful inspection. The incident took place in neutral waters near Turkey's Black Sea coast, according to websites that track ship movements. This, arguably this is a Ukrainian grain ship, but there is no evidence, from their position that it is or was. And so this is just them messing with regular shipping in effectively Turkey's territorial waters, which is what led to this. Following Russia's intervention, our partners in the Russian Federation were warned to avoid such actions that lead to an escalation of tensions in the Black Sea. President Erdogan's office said the captain of the dry cargo ship did not respond to the request to stop for inspection for carrying prohibited goods. In order to stop the ship by force, the Russian warship opened warning fire with automatic small arms, said the Russian Defense Ministry. The Russian Defense Ministry also released footage of a helicopter landing on the Sukra Okan. It shows men with assault rifles descending. We saw this footage like last week, I think, or whatever. Russian military asked the sailors questions, checked documents, wished the crew a safe journey. The dry cargo ship then proceeded to the Ukrainian port of Izmail, through which the Ukrainian agricultural products are exported. So it was on its way. Basically, they're like, oh, it's empty. Well, we'll get you on when you come back, when you're full of stuff. Which is effectively
this was a
shakedown.
So it was a shakedown. Yeah, absolutely. And a risky one to do for the Russians because of the possible fallout. If you look at the map of the Black Sea, what they did there, I suspect, is that they went along the southern coastline and then came up to intercede that ship. Where
Right.
they can't operate is the north coastline of the Black Sea, which is, you know, the Ukrainian, then there's Bulgarian, and then there's Turkish
Right.
territorial, you know, waters and that kind of stuff. So they had to go down and up. They can't operate like Odessa. There's no way that they're going to be able to stop anything going out of Odessa until it reaches further afield. And they can hug the coast, and they can go towards the Danube. And then, look, there's so many different ways. If people want to break the embargo that Russia is trying to impose on on Ukrainian exports of grain, there's so many different ways to circumvent it. If the will is there, if the intent
Right.
is there, and it looks like the international community is giving the middle finger salute to Russia when it comes to their threats of maintaining this embargo, this blockade.
Right.
It's good news.
Yeah, it is, and it's the pushback is very direct. It is not.
Yeah.
They're not
It's right in
mincing
their
words,
face.
which is, I think, the
it's right in their
best thing about it. Now, again, I'm fairly certain there were like Turkish seamen on there, and that's part of the concern as well. You've got your citizens working a regular grain ship, and your economy.
There was an Israeli ship that broke the blockade. I mean,
Mhm.
what would the Russians do to an Israeli ship?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
There's a whole
It's,
kettle of fish that opens with that one.
Exactly. Let's grab another question. What do we have, Johnny Million?
We've got from kind of a general one from Gen X George. Does Phil see any any end in sight to the war?
Yeah, I do. I do see an end to this war, and I know where it's headed. Ultimately, Ukraine is going to win this war.
Yep.
There's just no way that they're going to. The only way that Russia saves face is if they hold on to the land bridge, and if the international community forces Ukraine to basically abandon the land bridge, and by that I mean Mariupol in particular, but also to abandon Crimea for the sake of, you know, an end to the war, which has this potential of bubbling over and all the rest of it.
Right.
But if the Ukrainians are forced into abandoning that territory, Russia can eke out a win in quotation marks, but they've lost Ukraine forever, and that's devastating to them. There's no way that they are going to get a friendly government in Kiev ever again in our lifetimes. So when will that happen? I don't know. I'm not terribly pessimistic on the time frame thing, but I've been wrong about that before. So I'm cautious about saying when will the war end. The war will end when Ukraine retrieves its territory. And I still think that the land bridge certainly is on the table. I think Crimea could be regained. The Ukrainians certainly intend to take back everything back to the 1991 borders, which was the dissolution of the USSR. And that, again, that's a topic for another day because it's very complex. But I don't know. Even internally within Kiev, there are people in the government saying, don't expect it in spring of 24. It's going to be more than that. Well, that's look, one way or the other, this war is going to run its course. I do not see it going. I don't see it going into 2025.
Right.
I also think the Russians will have a say in this, in the sense that I don't know how much support is left for this thing. If there's a third mobilization call, which we hear talk that Putin is
rumblings of it,
getting ready to do a third large-scale mobilization, which, if the rumors and the information coming out of Moscow is true, might include police officers and interior ministry guys. These are the guys who go to protests and crack heads and keep the population in line. But they're already in uniform, they're already on the state's payroll, and they're already, militarized and trained and all the rest of it. So Putin might send them here, but that'll mean places like Ekaterinburg and Murmansk and, South Ossetia or North Ossetia. all these kind of like, well, Murmansk not so much, but certainly Ekaterinburg, that there's always been tension between them and the other the major cities in Russia.
Right.
There's, could we see protests? Could we see violent protests if the guys who are meant to crack down on that are then sent here? And also, in addition to that, a third round of mobilization is going to send a very clear message to Russia that things are not going well, and Russians are going to be, and also it's exhausting. So
right, the New York Times did a article, and it was interesting how they put it. Like it was, you could tell it was for clickbait. Effectively, the title that the deaths have reached 500,000. Right. And when you get into the article, you realize that the majority of the deaths are from the Russian side, and they outnumber the Ukrainian deaths. They double the Ukrainian deaths, which is amazing considering how big the military of Russia is versus the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians should not be stacking this many deaths and injuries as a smaller force in general. I mean, unless there's incompetence or inability of arms and that kind of stuff and ammo and whatnot on the Russian side. That said, I've got up on the screen, and we got to take a break, but when we come back, we'll have the happy ending and a couple more questions from our chat room. And don't forget, follow Philip Ittner on X. He's Ittner Philip over there until we can get him to join us along with Boston Brian, hallowed be his name, on Threads. But what I'm showing is a map of the direction of the Orkiv offensive towards Tokmak, towards Mirny, and towards Melitopol ultimately. Melitopol ultimately. Now, the idea is that according to the New York Times and Washington Post and everybody who's talking, they really do think they can get to Mirny, Myrne, something like that, which is enormous because just below Melitopol is an inlet river, a lake basically off of, I guess that's a saltwater lake or a freshwater lake. I can't tell from the map, but there's basically only about 10 miles of ground past it where you can drive around the bottom part of the city where you could connect things. But you have to go through Melitopol or you have to cross a bridge to get that stuff. So this would cut off that land bridge thing that they keep talking about. And fascinating enough, in World War II and in all these and other battles, what we wouldn't have given to know who was on the other side of the line. And I literally, on this map that is put up by Deep State, but it's pretty, there's multiple versions of it online. At the area where the Ukrainians are making through, the Russians have sent the 3rd Squad BARS, the 100th Separate Reconnaissance Brigade, the 11th Squad BARS, the 1st Squad BARS, the 45th Separate Special Purpose Brigade, the 14th Squad BARS, the 70th Motorized, the Rifle, and the 291st Guards Motorized Rifle Regiment. And then they've got backup from the 114th. They have surrounded that area. They are rushing everybody they have, but what you can really notice behind them is how much empty ground there is.
Yep. Not
covered by Russian forces. Again, the problem of occupation. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. They have one group in the 19th Motorized Rifle Division is in Tokmak, which, if the Wagner, there were more forces in Rostov-on-Don than there are in the 19th, I think. So that's, which I find fascinating. 42nd Motorized, they'll rush them over there if there's a problem, but they're to protect the other direction, I guess, and to resupply. And a lot of these are resupplies. Once they're not on the front lines, they're just supply depots and that kind of stuff. They're not fighters per se. There's definitely some fallback, but and then in Melitopol they have this the 56th Combined Arms Army. They're just holding the city in theory. But once they get close, Melitopol wasn't Russian territory, correct?
No, it's Ukrainian territory, and it wasn't fought over particularly hard at the beginning of the war. So
a lot of the citizens that might be there, if there's going to be any people who, start sabotage once there's help on the horizon.
I am happy, you are happy. Let us be happy together, whether the weather is cloudy or sunny. honey. I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky. Let us get lucky together. Whether the weather is cloudy or breezy, I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. 'Cause isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you? Chugga chugga choo choo woo. I am smiling, you are smiling. Let us smile together. Whether the weather is cloudy or stormy, I will still be there in the morning. I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning. I hope that you like cereal.
Yay!
Little
Yes.
dance with my buddy Patron.
Yeah, Patron, the bomb sniffing, the explosive sniffing dog. Right? Because it's not just mines and bombs. Or not just bombs, it's mines as well. Anyways, there's a lot to be hopeful about in the latest news out of there. Like I said, we're seeing a punch through in the line, and the idea that people watching the videos were essentially saying, "Oh, there's no mines." We always thought there'd be like giant minefields, and that they, if you just went through these areas, you'd be hit. And effectively, that tank video that I showed on the live stream a minute ago, where these guys ride in, start firing like maniacs, and then they beat feet out of there before they can target and return fire on them. And they're leaving, and bombs are exploding, 20 yards behind
and
them.
And a lot of those are cluster bombs.
Yes.
Or I should say cluster munitions. I've got to be careful with that because I was chastising CNN for calling them cluster bombs. They're not cluster bombs. They're cluster munitions. The Russians broke and they were running away, and the Ukrainians pelted them with cluster munitions. I hate cluster munitions. I think they're awful. I've seen what they did in Afghanistan. I saw them in a lot of different conflicts around the world. They're awful, awful, awful munitions. Having said that, however, if there's a good use of them, it's this, because they also will explode those minefields, so you can detonate the mines by using cluster munitions. And then when those Russian lines break and they flee, and I am not encouraging, I'm not happy to see Russians dying, but I am happy to see them fleeing. And if they don't want to die, drop your weapon and go home.
Super easy.
Any Russian that's in uniform carrying a weapon right now, my sympathy is very low for them.
That's right.
But nevertheless, it's still sad.
And Vladimir Putin could end this tomorrow.
And Putin's win. Yeah, and Putin could exactly. This is because of, Russia cannot abandon its sense of empire. If it could, this all could be over. So, but
we'd all be driving Ladas by now.
Those cluster munitions, as awful as they are, they're being put to good use here in Ukraine.
Right. So one of the I hate to use Schadenfreude kind of good news, because I like it to be free of any entanglements. But this Alexander Khodakovsky, who's a Russian commander, it's being reported, yes, who said on his Telegram channel, after Russian forces, including his own troops, were devastatingly defeated by the Ukrainian Marines earlier this week in Urozhne, in the Zaporizhzhia Donetsk regional border area, said, "Can we bring down Ukraine militarily now and in the near future? No." Khodakovsky, a former official of the so-called Donetsk People's Republic, said yesterday, "When I talk to myself about our destiny in this war, I mean that we will not crawl forward like the Ukrainians, turning everything into destroyed Bakhmuts in our path, and I do not foresee the easy occupation of cities," he said. "We can, though, enter a phase that is most unfavorable for Ukraine in its independent state, a phase of neither peace nor war." And I think this sums up why you don't have a talk with people like this, why the idea of letting them set some sort of standard that they never intend to live up to as part of a negotiation. If everybody involved is talking like this, and I do mean everybody, from Vladimir Putin to the people on television to his local commanders on the ground, this is it. We need to enter a phase of neither peace nor war. That's what this is, the Georgia plan. Yeah. This is honestly,
and it's also why the Ukrainians, who know their enemy far better than anybody on the planet, is very reluctant to leave them with even a symbolic win. They have to be driven out of Ukrainian territory fully, because if they're not, they're just gonna keep coming back. They'll just keep coming back. They'll just keep coming back.
Right.
That's the mentality here. And it sounds like almost like I know that there are those who say, oh, the Ukrainians are warmongers, and that they're, there was a peace plan that the West tried to implement, and
RFK Jr.
The Ukrainians, this RFK thing of like the Ukrainians and the Russians were headed towards a peace plan, but then we sent Boris Johnson over here and scuttled it.
Right?
No, man, no. Oh, I am here. I talk to Ukrainians every day, including Ukrainians in uniform and within the military structure. The mentality here is you cannot allow a bully to benefit from anything that he does, because if he does, he will just come back again.
Which is the lesson we should have learned from 2014. That's the thing.
Yep.
Like we shouldn't.
Yes.
And this is for all the people who talk about the Trump world, who believe that COVID was a bioweapon, which again, if it was, Donald Trump was president when it was happened, is the most ineffective defensive president we've ever had, because more Americans died by a violent attack than ever. If that's their argument, they've got to live with both sides of it. The idea is that if that plan was what they say it is, what you do is you send in a less virulent disease, you see how people react, you see them overreact or underreact, and you test what they're going to do, and then the next time you send the real thing. And in 2014, effectively, that's what the Russians did. They pushed this part in, they took as much as they could, they entrenched and walked back, and then they were going to salami slice, and this time they knew it was their last shot at it, so they just went for it.
You can even push it further back than that. You can say 2008. When the Western world did absolutely nothing when Russia invaded a sovereign neighbor in the form of the Republic of Georgia. I was there. I was in Georgia for the war. And one of the things that I kept trying to report on CBS News Radio was that the most significant thing about the war in Georgia, that it was a big FU to the world by Vladimir Putin. And that he was going to break international law. He was going to invade sovereign states. He was going to do stuff that was a big FU to the West. And the West didn't do anything. Right. So he went and did Syria, and the West didn't do anything. And then he did 2014, and he took a big chunk, a big bite out of the east of Ukraine in Donbass and in Crimea, and the West did next to nothing. Then they had years of the Minsk Accords, where I have firsthand accounts from the monitoring system in the East that they were deathly afraid of actually filing a report of violations of the Minsk Accords, because they were afraid that it would provoke Putin and Moscow. So they turned a blind eye to all the criminality. Then it's been a series of the West just turning a blind eye, not wanting to provoke Putin, not wanting to do anything. And now we've gotten to the point where we can't deny this anymore, and we can't appease anymore. We have to. We have
the language. I agree. The language around
do our business or get off the toilet.
Right. The language around this, I think, is particularly galling and indicative of what you're talking to. A phase of neither peace nor war. We could be in this phase if, he says, instead of the special military operation, the current occupied territories were recognized and officially taken under guardianship, meaning they become Russia. And he says, but it would require a completely different twist of history, meaning we could not have been losing this bad for this long. He needs a rewrite of what actually happened, and that's not going to happen. I appreciate you being here. Philip Bittner, by the way, everybody check out his vlogs on YouTube. Just look up Philip Bittner, 1L, 2 T's.
New one coming soon. Today
New one coming too.
Hopefully.
Don't forget, subscribe to Johnny Million's Twitch channel, twitch.tv/it's Johnny Million, if you love music. And we will see you guys next Saturday. I will be live streaming all week at infotainmentwars.com and at twitch.tv/HalSparks and on my Facebook page and everywhere you need to find me. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye. Thanks. Bye. I think we even got out a little early.
Almost. Like I was chasing down that extra 10 seconds. I don't know where I don't have a second hand on the clock that I watch for our breaks and stuff. So I don't know how close we were, but we were getting there. There it is.
Pretty close.
See?
Yep.
15 seconds is not bad. Thank you, Chicago.
Thanks, Chicago.
They're still
Thank
here.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, it's fine. Everything's fine. Good. Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you. Easy. Oh, John's just getting it out of his way. I see. Why?
Oh my!
You've been holding that the whole time?
We've got entirely too many troublemakers here.
We do.
Poor Johnny Million.
Oh, that's a good one.
Sorry, I farted.
Go to a doctor.
I
out.
Sorry, I farted.
He has now.
So, when we gotta set up our, we keep saying this, but we gotta actually do it, Phil. Maybe we can talk tomorrow afternoon or something like that. We can set up a time.
Sure.
Zoom in.
Sundays are bad for me generally, but
okay.
Yeah. Sometime very soon.
Okay.
Sometime between Monday and Wednesday of next week, if that's okay.
Okay. I think I'm battened down all this week anyways because of rain, weather, and whatnot, and I don't have to be in LA this week at all. So
cool.
I'll be here. So we can do
maybe why don't we
Tuesday.
Pencil it in on
Tuesday.
On Tuesday.
Yes.
Yeah, Tuesday.
Love that. Okay. We'll work that out. I'll send you a window of opportunity. Okay. Excellent. And same thing, Johnny Million. You and I, we're gonna have a play date sometime soon. By God. Did you get my message on Xbox?
I did. Yes.
Okay. Good. I was
I even replied. I saw the hiya.
There was a. The funny thing is I don't. I game when I'm listening to like long form podcasts on information that I find very dry, so that my ADD brain doesn't get distracted and wander off. So I'll occupy part of my brain with that while I listen to it, and it works out well. It's a good system for me. But I also feel like if I'm gaming, I'm not really working. So I have that bit of adult shame around it. So when you popped on and I saw that you were online, I was like, I'll leave him alone. You know what I mean? It's like I always feel like it's like an angel dead relative accidentally drifting by the house when you're masturbating. It's just not right. You know what I mean?
Wow.
You know what I mean?
It's just like that.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like
Thanks for sharing.
Well, no, we had a girl named Heidi at my school who explained her shame to all of us one day. Like, she would go, I can't, my grandmother watches over me. Like, I was like, what a terrible way to live. But
that's no good.
No good. Luckily, none of us have that problem. Anyways, appreciate you guys both. I'll see you later.
All right.
Have a great day.
See you later.
We'll talk on
Tuesday. Let's plan for Tuesday.
Okay,
right.
yeah, love it.
Take care, Johnny.
Okay.
All the best.
Cheers. Okay, excellent. And chat room, you guys are wonderful. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate all the super chatters and everybody. Oh, I had the cat cam on earlier because I have I have to make the cat cam button turn it on and off on each screen, so I don't have to have. I can have one button for all of them. Slava Ukraine, I agree. And thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I felt like I had so much news today that I was never able to get a grip on all of it because of the just volume of stories. I was like, good Lord, I might have to do some sort of like long, it did fly by, right? That's what happens when I just got like this, and this is interesting. And I'm curious about you guys, the folks that watch the regular show during the week and the people who are only here for Saturday and the mix of that group. Because I feel like I have a responsibility to recap a lot of what we've discussed over the course of the week in terms of certain news stories anyways on the Saturday show as like, this was the week that was, without getting too bogged down by it. But then sometimes I get a runaway of like new stuff that breaks the night before and off we go. So if it's, I'm going to try in the future to sort of organize those segments to, to make it easier on folks. You know what I mean? Obviously Ukraine, it's a constant new update when we're talking about stuff. But during the first hour, I do think, an element of reminding everybody of what happened over the week and addressing it as if not everybody caught all of it, because the long form streams can be a lot. I understand that. But at the same time, people may catch up on it, and I just don't want to retread the same information too much, although we deal with it a lot. This is where my Libra brain goes. This is my back and forth. I apologize. It's just, I worry about you guys. I want you guys to be entertained and informed. It's a goal. So, anyways, thank you guys for the super chats and the support today. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for becoming. Thanks to our patrons. Love you guys. Patreon.com/HalSparks. If you want to support at any level, it's very helpful. Cup of, or if you just want to Venmo me the price of it. Summer brought me tea in the middle of the thing, which was lovely. And because Chud was outside my door, just caterwauling, literally caterwauling. Hold on, is she still down here? Nope, she went upstairs. Okay, I think she wanted a ride. She often wants a ride back upstairs after she poos, and she's like, dude. And then, so I think Summer gave her the ride. So, anyways, love you guys. See you later. Have a great weekend. Talk to you. See you Monday morning. Okay, bye. Why did my light go out? I didn't push a button. Oh my God. You know what it could be? Could be the kidney. No. It's loose in here somewhere. It's probably just the wind. No. That it couldn't have been the wind because this is the wind.